Hi, time for a bit of Nomad sculpting. So this video is all about the Minotaur head that I did for the 185 release and for the quad remesher. And hopefully you've seen those videos by now. And basically this video is just a talk over or a speed ramped video and me talking over how I do this kind of a basic sculpt. So join me for half an hour in a very relaxed way, just looking at Nomad Sculpt and the sculpting tools. So I'm going to be talking to you into camera and I'm going to be looking at my own work on the screen. So I'm not going to describe every single thing. I'm basically just going to work through the video. So I usually start with a primitive. So it's quite often a sphere or a cube. And in this case, it's a sphere and a cube. And one of the big things with Nomad sculpting, as with ZBrush and as with Blender, is you have to get used to the remeshing. And in Nomad's case, it's most of the time that's going to be voxel remeshing. And that basically just meshes your shapes together. It's one of the fundamental things that you need to learn. So what you basically do is you take those primitives and you push them together and you make a rough outline or a block out, and then it gets remeshed, so that covers the mesh with one contiguous mesh of polygons, and then that means that you can then basically just keep sculpting. Now I'm blocking this out, so I use the tube tool here, and the tube tool is a great way. It's a curve that you put in space and then you put your geometry along it. So to make a horn, obviously, is perfect. There's a couple of settings at the top of the screen there on the radius. If you tap them all, you can change the radius individually by point. And then it's just a case of using symmetry and flipping it across X, and that gives you the two horns. Once you know these tools, it's super easy to do things like this. And for shapes that are predictable, like horns or ears or spikes or things like that, then you can definitely learn that in a matter of seconds. Really, it doesn't take long at all to get used to those kind of tools. So for the ear there, I've just used another primitive. So I've just taken a cylinder, squashed it down vertically, and then I'll just put it roughly where it goes and embed it slightly in the ear, in the skull. As you can see there, I wasn't happy with the body, so I pulled that back with the move tool, and then I just went in and then just basically started to put the ear in the right place. I voxel removed one part of an indent into the ear. You can either do that with the Boolean tool, which is one of our next videos, or using Boolean, or do it with a voxel removal like I did there. And then basically just add some volume to the ear. So I'm using inflate there, and I'm pushing, making the volume of the fat around the top of the ear here match what I'm after. A bit more reshaping, so we're still very much just blocking out, still looking at, have we got one of everything and is it the right kind of volume? By volume, if you don't know what that means, obviously it doesn't mean audio. It means how big something is, the silhouette of it. So when we talk about form or silhouette and then say volume, it means is there enough shape around the earlobe or around the fat around the cheeks? Is there enough volume in there? And obviously that really matters for sculpting in every way. So there you can see me putting in another sphere. So one of the most important things to do when you're sculpting is, if you know you've got an eye, for example, is to put the eye in. Separate object, completely separate from the head, but it allows you to build things like the eyelid around that spherical shape. And really, it's very hard for you to sculpt an eye inside of the mesh that you're sculpting on. And I've gone up a little bit the resolution. I've increased the voxel amount, and that gives me more polygons to work with. And what you can see there is it means that I can sculpt a little bit more detail on the surface. So I'm still, this is detailing now because the block out was pretty much done. I might change it a little bit, but I'm pretty much filling in like secondary muscle groups now. So where I think there's the snout needed a bit more, then I've gone in and filled it up. I'm using an indent, so I'm using the in reverse of the clay brush just to push in the surfaces around the nostrils there. Didn't use a lot of reference for this, and probably could have done really. Probably could have improved the look of it. You know, it's based on a bovine, so a cow, or you know, it's a Minotaur head, but obviously it's based on a cow. So probably should have used a bit more rather than just going ahead and bashing it up as I often do. So now at this point, I'm thinking about the mouth. So do I need a separate mouth, or do I just, you know, should I you know, cut it in? And I'm building the volume around the muzzle, so I'm building this area up here before I do the mouth. So now I've chosen just to push it in with, you know, the inversed clay tool. That's given me enough of a hole to start thinking about how the cheek folds will come down and how the lips are on this kind of creature. It's really a mashup of a human and a cow, so I've not gone for any specific reference. I've just drawn what I think you know this character needs, and obviously I've done it. This particular one was done for a number of videos. So what I've tried to do is make it so it's got like parts that would be good for remeshing. So obviously the horns are good for that, and having those ears there, but not, you know, having them in as part of the body. But I mean, they're currently still separates, but they're, you know, things like that will just make it a little bit trickier for the retopology or the remesh in this case. So again, keep remeshing, keep changing it. One thing I'm not using a lot of that I probably would use more normally would be the flatten tool. So I'm doing a lot of this with clay and the reverse of clay, but I'm not doing much in the way of flatten, which would have probably been a bit better. I always like this bit here. I always like doing the cheek. I always like, you know, you can see me giving that cheek some volume there. Underneath, and it really squares off the jaw there, the cheek area and the jaw area here, two of my favorites, and that leads to the back of the ear there, so you can see there. In some projects I leave the ear separate, and that's sometimes because, certainly with Nomad anyway, because I could sometimes do more what they call subsurface scattering. So sometimes I want to push more light through an ear. So it doesn't work on every character, and I wouldn't do it in other programs like Cinema 4D or any of the other bigger programs that I use, because I just do it with masking on certain parts of the model. So again, back to the form. So, you know, I've got quite a bit of detail in there now, but it still isn't quite right. So I'm still not happy with, you know, is the width of the head right? And, you know, all of the core dimensions are all getting changed on the fly, as you can see. So the mouth shape doesn't look right. He looks really sad, doesn't he, there? So tweak of the tongue. Now, sometimes I'll do a separate tongue, and sometimes I'll do what I've done here, where I just sculpt in some sort of a volume. Now, for the teeth, it basically, there's lots of options that you can use for the teeth. So what I've chosen to do here is, first of all, do the gum with a torus. So I've just made the shape, chopped off the back half of it with the trim tool, and then remeshed it. And it's given me something that will hold the teeth. So it's given me the gum, basically. So any primitive is fine for this. Sometimes I use, you know, a sphere, or sometimes I just make it, you know, as I've done with this head. And then the teeth to sit in it, just another cube. And then I just literally, with a huge brush, big important point of that is big brush, just pull that forward so it arcs the tooth around. So it gives you like a roundness to the tooth. And there's just these incisors at the bottom, at the front, are just thin, flat teeth with that bit of curve to them. So rename it, duplicate it, and I'm keeping them all on a separate layer, each one, you know, separate face group now, actually. And they're all, you know, individually moved. So there's no symmetry with these teeth. They're just me throwing the shapes in and then getting them to look right. I have actually had a dentist contact me either this year or late last year to say that my teeth aren't particularly good and I've got teeth missing. Let me just level this camera off a little bit because it's sinking. There we go, level again. So teeth, just keep repeating them. Keep looking at the shapes. So you've got these incisors at the front. Obviously, with this is a bovine, so it eats grass. Generally, you wouldn't be putting canines in. You wouldn't want to put anything big, spiky. You might want to put slightly bigger incisors for cropping. They crop grass normally. So like us, they'd have a larger front tooth, that the incisor there. And then I always like to make these non-symmetrical as well. I think teeth looking non-symmetrical and a little bit bent always adds to some character. If you have them looking regular, they don't look particularly realistic. And then generally, I only usually really need to make one tooth. And then what I quite often do, if I did need canines, I'd just rotate it down and use the thinner end as the spike. But here, what I'm doing is I'm just really just making sure that I've got the teeth in the right orientation, the right kind of shape, the height, the curve in them. You can see the outline there. I don't know whether you know, but if you put the outline on, which is top right in the menu there, you can see an outline, coloured outline. I've got mine coloured black, but sometimes you'd see me having it coloured green. That's sometimes quite useful, and that means that whichever piece that you're working on has got an outline, you can see it there even through the other models, which is really, really useful. So just leveling off just leveling off the tooth to make it as it sits across the I don't know what the name of the term of it is, across the bridge of the mouth there. Just making sure that everything's sitting quite nicely. Same tooth, duplicate over and over again. Once you get inside the back of the mouth, it doesn't really matter unless you're doing a really specific character. It's just nice to have something in the back of the mouth catching bits of light. So don't be tempted just to put them across the front like we would with maybe a puppet or something like that. It's good to see it going back deep into the cavity of the mouth, and the definition of the tooth won't matter as much there. You can sculpt on it more, but just change the orientation, change the position, make sure it reads from different angles. And you may want to change this at a later stage. I don't voxel merge teeth. What I do is I join them, and that means they all stay separate objects for the future, so you can pull them around if needed. So you might group them all together, and put them all in one, and join them and call them teeth. And then paint them like that. But what you wouldn't do is then voxel merge, because they would literally weld together, and then you're not going to have much success down the line with that. So there, you can see me doing exactly that now. So just selecting everything together one by one, and because I've got outline on, you can see that they're all selecting as a group. So that's quite useful. And then you can select all of the teeth, or just the upper teeth, or the upper and lower. And here what I've done is I've selected all the upper and all the lower. So if you did want to do like group the gum and the teeth, that would work better like that. So you can see now we're getting less and less models because the teeth are being grouped back to one single object. Again, great for painting. If you just want a different material, you're going to want a glossy material on this. We're not covering painting in this video, simply because this is just about doing a sculpt, the Minotaur sculpt. So, and I want to do more texturing videos. Now we've got a good workflow inside of Nomad with the UV maps, the ability to bake maps. You can paint on vertex, you can paint vertex maps, which is poly painting ZBrush, and then you can export that to a map inside here. So that's pretty special, really. That's quite that needs more videos. So if you put it in the comments if it's something that you're particularly interested in. I don't cover a lot of texturing because I'm much more of a sculptor and probably more of a 2D artist, really, rather than doing a lot of texturing. So now I'm using one of the really well-used tools. This is the crease tool. Now I'd like a better tool than this. I think ZBrush on the iPad will have a better version of this because it has something called Dam Standard, and Nomad has never quite got that ability to do that creasing just as well. So that will be interesting to see once ZBrush iPad comes down the wire. But it's crucial to get those really thin lines in the surface, those scratches and claw marks and wrinkles. It's really important to have that right. So adding a bit more fat around the surface areas of the jaw and the chin. So everybody really focuses on muscles. They focus on skeletons, skull in this case, and the muscles, and how it all looks, but not enough time is spent on the fat on top of that. So you'll have skeleton, muscle, then you've got obviously tendons and ligaments depending on what it is you're doing. So the tendons are what joins the white bit that joins muscle to a bone. That'll be a tendon. So you'd have an insertion to origin point. What that means is it starts at some bone, stuck to a bone, comes through the fibers of the muscle, and then attaches to another bone with, so it'll be like white and then red, and then white is the traditional thing that you see a lot of. But with that's tendons, and then you've got ligaments which just attach bone to bone. So things like your kneecap, there's a ligament there, and that's just white. So, and they're different. So the muscle, the red stuff you see in muscle is rounded and, you know, and expands and contracts. And the white stuff on there, the tendon, can be stringy and strong, and you know, you can see it in things like your wrists here. You know, whereas sometimes you don't see a lot of the ligaments because they're deep down inside quite often. It's very rare that they pop to the surface. But it's good to know these things, because as you build up your repertoire of skills for modelling, that's a crucial part of it. So I'm well into the secondary, or, you know, like the second part of sculpting, which is now detailing, which is now doing all of the larger muscle groups. So wherever there's like big folds or big chunks of muscle, then I'm getting them in now. Everything's in place. We've got one of everything. We're not going to chop the model up again. We probably won't voxel remesh much now. I'm going to do another video just on this process with quad remesh. You'll see that coming a lot over the next few weeks. So, you know, at this point, you could actually quad remesh it and then reproject it and carry on sculpting, but we don't want to cover that yet. This is good enough just to go through the sculpting or sculpting techniques like this. So, again, I'm probably only using 2 or 3 tools at this point. So you'll see me using the move tool a lot to get the volumes in the right place. Clay to build up those volumes, and obviously to smooth down as well. So between move and clay, you'll probably say that would be the majority of it, and then I add into that flatten, inflate, and the crease tool. They're probably the ones that I do the most of across all of this kind of thing. So still not completely convinced by all of these volumes here. So I'm literally rolling around and saying, right, do I need it to be thinner, fatter, wider? Do I need to have, you know, something? It's all, I suppose it's all about thinking about catching the light and does it look right in certain lights. So when I'm sinking in those cheeks, I'm thinking, right, there'd be a nice shadow coming down there. And does it look like the intended creature? Are we on track for it to look like a Minotaur? Which I'm hoping that at this point I'd decided that it is good, you know, it is right. So sometimes I will abandon at this point. If things aren't going right at this point, you know, sometimes I'll just leave it and walk away. What you shouldn't ever do is just keep fighting a really, really bad model. You know, people say never give up, but actually sometimes it's best to adjust and, you know, go and try something else. Or you know, you won't get them all right. Definitely you won't get them all right. It's, you know, it's just a case of you know, if you're doing this for a living, you want to get them all right, but it's not that easy. So clay brush again to do skin folds. So I'm building folds over the top of other folds. This is the sternocleidomastoid on a human, which cattle don't have. It's a very different arrangement, because obviously a cow is like the spine is like this and the head sticks out the front, whereas us, we're on the top. So we need these, you know, like spinal erectors at the back to hold us up. The trapezius helps us, and then at the front we got control with having these big ones here, the sternocleidomastoid. But with a cow that is horizontal like this, it does have big strapping muscles that hold the head up rather than stabilize it upwards, and that's why I've had to put in what we've got, you know, because this guy is on a human torso. So as you can see, it reflects that there. So knowing that kind of thing really helps you, that you're mixing anatomy there. So, you know, you've gone from bovine to Homo sapien. You're adding in the human touch, which is obviously, it changes it, you know, significantly really. So probably would say we're towards the detailing stage now. So we're getting to the point where we're adding in tiny little muscle build up, and we're adding in creasing, and we're adding in, you know, anything that I spot now that's a smaller detail. Any minute now we're gonna have to work on those horns, and we're gonna have to start thinking about how do we get texture and detail into those horns. But actually for the head, it's looking quite good. Okay, so now it is time to do the horns. So we're going to add some volume first of all. So we're going to say, right, what does it look like as we're spinning it round? Sometimes it's good to just paint it black, and then you can see it as you spin it around as a silhouette. But you can get a feel from it just from this mat cap. So first of all, have we got the right volume? There's no point in starting to sculpt on it if it's not going to look like the right sort of size or shape or position or length, or, you know, does it work in all the different angles? So get all that right first, and then, you know, start thinking about things like the topology. So there I was thinking, right, I need to do a voxel remesh so I can start a proper sculpt on it. So you know, you'll see there if I put the wireframe back on in a minute that it's, you know, it's not a huge resolution, but it's given me enough to start with. So I'm going to now constantly keep adding detail to it. So it'll probably, most often I use the the damp standard, which is crease in Nomad. I'm giving you ZBrush terms there. And then I build up using clay, again with a very, very small brush, and quite a high intensity. That gives me that kind of streaky effect. I mean, I was thinking about these horns being very much like wood. So I'm thinking about them like bark almost, and of course you can use alphas to get that surface detail, but it's good to get these big deep scars in there. So if you want to lay over with the clay brush to get a kind of a striation effect like that, you can see it works well, and then work over the top of that with something like the crease tool to get the creases in there. And you can see a combination. That's exactly what I'm doing there. It's a combination of both of those. So it's either clay or crease on there. And with the clay you can go negative, so you're adding in some of these indents, you know, as an indented clay rather than the crease. Don't forget you've always got smooth, so you can hold down the smooth button and you can smooth the surface, and that will always improve things. So it's looking quite good already, really. So you can, at this point, I mean, I don't here, but you can change the material and have a look at it with different materials, and that sometimes gives you an idea if your model's working well. So change to crease, and now I'm putting in some of the deep scores. So certainly with the bull, I was thinking it would always been, you know, bashing its head on the walls and bashing, you know, into things. So you want to make it really scored, like real big gouges into it, and almost like broken concrete or broken wood. It is a nice touch. And then, as you can see there, I'm just putting in more creases as I come round. So as this comes round to the side, you'll see that it catches the light really, really well. And those indents are brilliant. I did a little circle there, which is like you would do on a knot on a piece of wood. So that looks a bit like a Pinocchio puppet. So that's quite a lot of detail on there now. That would generally be enough to, you know, to indicate what we want to do. And don't forget they're separate, so they're still very, very separate pieces. You can see with the outline, with the black outline, and that means we can still manipulate them as a separate. Now, when I've done the other videos with this head, I've just really worked on the head, so you won't see the horns in those videos. It'll just be the core of the head when we're making things like maps. See there, back onto the head with the crease tool. So really getting into detailing now. So starting to think about how the nose would wrinkle behind it, and how the eyes, you know, do they need wrinkles, and like the nostrils, do they need more surface detail. I've said this quite a few times already, but it really helps because we're trying to catch light and make visual interest. So if the surface doesn't have like imperfections in it, it just looks fake. So wherever possible, we'll put like bigger you know, things like big scars and, you know, big skin issues that he might have had, or battle damage or stuff like that, and then go in with a finer brush, and then we can go in with alphas on the final stage, and we can add in, you know, really fine surface detail. So I'm always interested to see what you are up to with this, so please follow me on Instagram, and I am actually on X, or Twitter as it used to be known, and Threads as well. But by all means join our Facebook groups, because we're quite active in there, helping new users. And you know, there's a 30,000 plus Nomad Sculpt group that where I'm a moderator with Dan Torres, and you can just join our private groups if you want to go and you know, get any more of this learning in the smaller group. So just look up Southerngfx online, and you'll get a fix of where we are, and we'll obviously help whenever we can. And obviously we do courses for all of this, so by all means look at the comments and the description down below, and have a look at what our latest courses are. We haven't done a lot recently because we're switching over to a new system, but that'll all be announced in the next few months. So back onto the shaping there a little bit, because we've now got to the point where we're adding lots of nice surface detail. I'm spotting things that I hadn't done well enough. So what I'm doing is I'm just going around and just doing little minor tweaks to the either to the shape, the volume, or to the position. So if the mouth isn't quite right, I'll pull it up and move it around. You can see that I've significantly slowed down now, so there's a lot less going on, because I'm considering it a lot more now. So I'm looking at it and I'm probably thinking a bit more. And I know this is speed ramped, but it's still, you can still see some patches where I just stop and analyze what I've made. And that's a good tip, really, is just, you know, just take your time with some of this stuff. Don't go hell for leather diving into it. There might be times where you stop and you can go and have a look at some reference. And obviously I don't hear on the screen, but you can call up reference and have it in the screen with you. But this one is more of a, this head was designed for Aeneid, which is I needed a model that we could then use for the 185 version test. So this wasn't really planned. It was just, this is what evolved, and this is a great place to explore doing this kind of pushing a model around. And it's just a bust, so it's a, you know, very small, you know, bust, but it doesn't take long. So this is time ramped to ½ an hour. So the whole thing took just, and this is like 50% time, so it's like it took an hour. So once you get to the point where you can bash these out in about an hour, the pieces like this, then you can spend the remaining time really working on it. If you get it right at this level and you get all of the, you know, the positioning, you can see me doing it there on the mouth, pulling it, you know, making sure it looks good from the side, making sure the creases look right, making sure it's realistic, then you can spend much more time on the detailing if you've got all this right. And again, there's still quite a lot that I could do with this, but as a core sculpt, that probably has most of what I want. You can see it now. I'm just rolling it around, having a look at it myself, and you can see that it, you know, without any surface detail at this stage, it's really got everything that I would want. So at this point, now that we've got quad remesher, I might do a quad remesh and project this detail back onto a quad remesh, because the mesh then behaves a lot better than a mesh like this. And I'll explain all that in a projection video that's coming probably next week now, certainly in the next 2 weeks, and that will explain about how to get the low poly detail, the high poly detail onto the low poly model. And if you don't know that, that's a really good one to nail, and that's a workflow that everybody should really get into and have a look at that. So coming to the end of this video now. So again, it was just the sculpt part, so I hope you've enjoyed it. This character is going to be used a lot, so I will use it for texturing, I will use it for UV unwrapping, so you will see it a lot. And in other videos, if this is the kind of thing that people are enjoying seeing, I'll do more of these time ramps and just these general chit chats. Which means I can show you some of the concepts rather than the individual tools. I think over the last 3 years I've covered all of these tools, and obviously we've got them all in our course as well. But this is more about me going over, you know, processes and workflow processes. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. It does help us to get in front of other people who like this kind of content. And if you've given us a thumbs up, then join the channel by subscribing, really. So just join us every week as we put out new content. Have a great week, everyone.